And welcome back to session 2. We are ripping through these sessions. It's been very, very active over in the chat, and we are so excited to see how many questions you have and how excited you are to learn all about homeschooling. And now we're going to move into learning about Sonlight. So in this session, we are going to be talking about what makes Sonlight different. So when we talk to people in the booth, most people are used to a traditional approach, which is a textbook with questions at the end of the chapter and maybe a test, maybe some workbooks. This is not that. This is quite different. And it may take a little time to kind of wrap your head around how different it is that we don't have tons of worksheets and we don't do tests. And there's a reason for all of that. So in this first session, we have quite a few of our speakers that will be sharing. We actually have 3 separate sessions, and we are going to hear about what is literature-based learning. That is what Sonlight uses. We are a literature-based approach. So what does that mean exactly? So let's hear from our experts about this topic.
So with Sonlight's literature-based curriculum, you get all the books that you need to read to them, and you get all of the lesson plans that you need. Everything is completely planned out for you. And I will tell you, back when I first started homeschooling, I used to be a high school teacher, and I knew how much time that planning took. And that was a very daunting thing to me. How can I teach my children all these subjects and plan all of that out? And Sonlight has done all of that for you. So everything is planned with the instructor's guide, but you do have the flexibility to use the guide as you wish. We kind of consider it a very large buffet, and you can choose from all the different things. It's okay to do it all. It's okay to leave a couple things out. It's a very, very rich curriculum. And so Sonlight guides you through each day what to read with your child. It gives you discussion questions so that you can assess their comprehension. And some people that do know a little bit about Sonlight will ask, well, how do you know they're learning? Because I heard that there aren't any tests in Sonlight. And so testing, a typical multiple choice or whatever, study for a test and do it, that kind of thing has its use in a classroom setting when you've got one teacher and 20 something children and you need to know what they know. But when you are one-on-one with your child, reading the books together, doing discussion questions together, you don't have to have a traditional sort of test to know what they're learning. And I mentioned that my children are in college. So their first history tests in their whole entire lives, were once they got to college, and that was okay. The traditional type of test does not have to be done when they are, young and in elementary school and all that kind of thing. You are learning as you go. So Sonlight teaches your children in the most engaging way possible, which is through stories and through biographies and things like that. One of my absolute favorite parts about homeschool with Sonlight all these years was taking our read alouds, even on vacation. And one of my favorite memories is just being in the hotel room after a long day of doing whatever we were doing on that vacation and ending our day by snuggling together in the hotel room and reading those read alouds and continuing that education wherever we went.
Well, I think one of the big questions when people come into the booth and ask about our curriculum is, what does literature-based learning mean? And that just means that we are going to use engaging stories, historical fiction, biographies, living books to bring history to life instead of dull textbook text. I think the other thing people are kind of confused about when they first encounter Sonlight is, why would this work for first to third grade? Do I use it for 3 years? Or what does that mean? And it really just means that the material included in a level for first to third grade would be appropriate for most first to third graders. And why do you care about that? Well, if your children are close in age, you can use the same program with them. So that makes Sonlight super easy to implement. It saves you time and money. And then you throw in our wonderful instructor guides, and it really makes homeschooling your children almost as easy as following a recipe.
In a nutshell, I would say the instructor's guide has been my best friend on this homeschooling journey. The instructor's guide that breaks down every single day, not just every week, but every day, helps me to stay on track. The years I have lived in a state where I needed to have documentation, it was right there for me. So I loved that. I did not have to reinvent the wheel. Sonlight pulled together the resources that I would not have known about, and maybe I could have tried fumbling through to pull all of those together on my own, but that's where all of my time would have been spent instead of just enjoying schooling my children. So the instructor's guide for Sonlight has been huge. Number two, the way that Sonlight instructs by using living books, great literature, the narrative approach where we're learning history through reading great stories, learning science through pulling different resources together. I just loved that approach that we learn history by actually living it because we're using story. I also love that we're not on the computer all the time, that I'm reading to my children. Their vocabulary from the time they were so early was large because they were being read to all the time. And I think as a person, I probably would have read to my kids anyway, but I would never have known about all of the books, nor would I have had time to pull together all the books. So yeah, I think those are just the organizational aspect of it and the quality of the literature and the exposure to cultures and people and events and time in an orderly way. That's what I have loved about Sonlight. Also, as the homeschool mom of 5, I have loved that I made a major purchase for number 1, which actually wasn't that major compared to other curriculums. It's really very comparable and much less than private school. But I made that large purchase for child 1, but I was able to use the majority of that curriculum 5 times or 4 times, because sometimes I smashed some kids together. But I was able to reuse the majority of it. So the cost was, basically that initial purchase divided by 5.
Well, my favorite things about Sonlight are that it is literature based. So instead of textbooks and workbooks for the bulk of your education, you're reading actual living books, which were not, written to be a textbook for a class, but written to be enjoyed and informative. And that to me is the most important part. The second most important part to me about Sonlight is the instructor's guide, which lays out every assignment, every reading in a schedule that is completely done for you and so easy to follow that it really takes all the planning out of off of your plate.
So I would say that there's a lot behind the, I guess, the bones of Sonlight. If you look, I always recommend looking at the scope and sequence that shows how it all kind of fits together. There is a plan. It all comes together. And you might look and say, oh, you just have a pile of books. But no, that's not how it works. There's a big process that Sonlight goes through in choosing the books and having the best materials for the topics that you're covering, whether it is in history or in science or in the language arts concepts that you're covering. Then you have basically all of those concepts covered with the best books that Sonlight can find for the topics. And it's put together in a really unique way. I think early on, I asked one time in the booth when I was new in working with some of the leadership from Sonlight, and I asked, there was someone there that I could say, this year, I just noticed I've been using Sonlight for years, but like in the last couple of years, I've noticed that there's just such a mix of the perfect, sometimes we're using a level 4 book, and sometimes we're using a level 1 book, and sometimes we're using a level 2 book. And it's not like we put them in order and easiest to hardest. There's this really wise mix of books that you cover. And after you've covered a challenging read, then you have a read that's not that is an easy, quick, fun read. And so I think there's a lot of that's in the mix with Sonlight. That's part of the secret sauce, I would say, is that it is, really well scheduled. And the instructor's guide is laid out where I was looking for something that I could open and go and spend my time learning instead of planning and, making unit studies and making lots of decisions. Instead of making lots of decisions, I'm actually opening the books and getting started with my kids.
Okay, we're back. That was a lot of information, wasn't it? So we have gotten quite a few questions. I took a note. I took some notes. The questions about combining, like there were lots of questions about how to teach multiple kids. We're going to cover that in session 3. So there's a whole session that will talk about how to combine and how to do multiple levels and things like that. So we're not going to answer those questions. But Judy, do you want to tackle a question or two?
Absolutely. Lots of great questions here, but there was a lot of information, like Sheila said. So someone asked, how have you managed the reading when you have 2 HBL, History, Bible, Literature levels? I actually was having this conversation with my daughter the other day, who is homeschooling our grandkids with Sonlight. And my initial statement to her was, well, that's really a personal preference. There is nothing that says you have to read every single book that's scheduled. There are no Sonlight police who are going to come to your house and check to see that you've read every single book. And so one of the things that I suggested to her was look at some of the books that specifically are tied to the time period in history you're studying. Those might be exceptionally helpful to kind of reinforce the history. And any place where you can have children from both levels sit together and listen, that's just a bonus. So look through that list of books. Are there titles there that you remember from your childhood that really impacted you? Absolutely. Read that with your children. Give your kids a chance to make a choice. Pull out a couple of books and tell them what each one is about a little bit and ask them which one they'd like to hear. So just please be reassured that you don't have to read every single book. And you know what? If you don't get through them all, you have this wonderful bookshelf in your personal library that you can pull from over the summer. Or maybe Dad wants to do some reading over the weekend. So yeah, lots of ways to make 2 levels work.
Yeah, I saw someone ask about how it works. So Sonlight, our history, Bible, literature, we have what we call a spine, a history spine. That's going to be the main book that is going to carry the thread of history. So it's as close as we get to a textbook, but it reads more like a story. It doesn't read as dry as a textbook. And then that is kind of the hub of the wheel. So the spine is going to be the main book. And as you're reading about a time period, about events, about eras, about people within those eras, you will also have a read aloud that will tie in with that history. And you will have a reader. So the child has a book that they read and the parent has a book that they read. And there's the spine. So there are multiple books. I like to say it's like an onion with multiple layers. That all of that beautiful coming together begins at level D. D is in dog. Before that, all of the levels before that, preschool, pre-K, kindergarten through C, all of our levels have not an age designation to it because it's literature based. There is a range of ages that level is appropriate for. So for example, level A is appropriate for 1st through 3rd grades, which means that all of the books that come in that particular level are safe or appropriate comprehension-wise, content-wise, maturity-wise, for that age range, for you to read aloud to that age range. As they get older, the books are going to get longer. So the attention span needs to be a little bit longer. So we talk to people in the booth that say, well, I have a 7-year-old who can read at the high school level. And we say, you don't want a 7-year-old reading high school books, because those books are going to touch on things that you do not want to expose your 7-year-old to. So what do you do in that case? You just give them more books at their level. So just let them read voraciously. If they read through everything in the instructor's guide, then you can go to the library and get more. But don't get harder books. Also, our readers and our language arts tie in together. So again, a lot of kids can read at a higher level than they can write. So when you're talking about choosing, what level to get, you want to choose based on the lowest. So if the writing is the lowest, then that is where you want to place them. And you want your reading to match the language arts. So there's just a little bit of information for you about that.
Somebody else also asked if you have students using the same history Bible literature level, like a 4th grader and a 5th grader, which is very possible based on what Sheila just explained, that each level is written to a range of ages. Is their table work more differentiated? And absolutely. To define table work, those are skill-based subjects. So those are subjects you would sit at a table to do: math, handwriting, spelling, those kinds of subjects. And yes, we would absolutely recommend that a 4th grader probably is not going to do the same math level as a 5th grader. And so we have free assessments on our website where you can have your kids take those, and that will give you a much better idea of which level of table subjects you should have them use. So they can absolutely share their couch subjects, the place where you sit and read all those great books. But when it comes to the skill-based subjects, it should be based on their skill level, not on their age, not on their grade, but on the level at which they actually are working.
There's so many questions. We could just sit here and talk about that all day, but we have another workshop to go to. And this is also what happens in the Sonlight booth. We'll be talking to people, and then all of a sudden the workshop start and the booth empties out. So let's go to our next workshop, which is talking about how is Sonlight different.
I think one of the things that does make it the most different is that it is truly literature based. And that is what what was so appealing to me with Sonlight, because I was already reading, to my children. And then I got a hold of a Sonlight catalog and read about it and saw, wow, this is a package of books, turned into a curriculum. And I was just amazed by that. So compared to many other curriculums that are textbook based, Sonlight is just so much more engaging because you are learning through stories. And we went to a used bookstore when my children were younger. And so we went to kind of a nonfiction section that had some textbooks in there. And so I pulled one out, and we had been learning American history. So we looked up the Boston Tea Party. We had just finished reading John E. Tremaine, historical fiction about this time period where you really get to know the characters and, what's going on and what people are feeling. It's just such an engaging way to learn, and a memorable way that sets it apart from any kind of textbook-based, workbook-based curriculum. And I do know that there are some other literature-based curriculums out there, but Sonlight is the only one I have seen that really truly gives you everything you need. You don't have to find any of the books from the library. It's not just okay, here are some books, that you could read for this. Go find some. Oh goodness, no, it's not like that at all. They truly give you everything you need, and it is all planned out for you too. So that is just a time saver and gives you more time to enjoy doing school with your children.
So a couple of things make Sonlight's book selections of a higher caliber than some of the other curriculum out there. And one of those is that it has this very global, mission-minded focus. So if a book takes place in another culture, you're really going to get like a deep dive feeling into the culture. And instead of reading a textbook about China, if you're reading a book that takes place in China about a Chinese person, then you're really getting a feeling for the day-to-day, or the landscape, or the food they eat, or the way that they speak to each other in a way that a textbook just can't give you. And Sonlight's been very careful to include books that really give you this taste of life of so many different cultures. Another thing I love about Sonlight books is that it's standard that the characters will be well-rounded, that the plot will be really well thought out and woven together. So it's not just any old book about, a girl with a challenge. It's books that really give you a feel for what people are going through and the culture that they live in, and kind of all of those things woven together across the curriculum when the readers are covering the same time period as the history, really makes it just a really robust.
Again, so much information. And you guys, the questions are coming faster than we can answer them. So let me just remind you that if you have specific questions, that if we're not getting to them, to go ahead and make an appointment. It's at the very top of the chat. Make an appointment so that you can talk with one of us to get your questions answered. But we do have to move on because we have one more presentation before this session is over. And then if time allows, we will try to answer some more questions. This next session is all about the instructor's guide. I saw some of the chat people that were saying how much they love the instructor's guide. I love the instructor's guide. Now, I do have a degree in education, so in theory, I could write my own lesson plans. But why? When they have been done for me and they are excellent. And we like to say that the instructor's guide is not your taskmaster. It is a tool. So let's hear from our experts how they have enjoyed the instructor's guide.
Very good questions. And mentioning that I do have a teaching background, I'm certified for secondary school science. And there are many people that when they learned I was going to homeschool said, oh, that's so great. You can do that because you're a teacher. And here I am with this kindergartner. Did I ever take teaching classes about kindergarten and teaching how to read? No, not in the least. So those Sonlight instructors guides are so valuable. They include your week at a glance, basically, where it's a grid and it shows very simply what pages you're going to read in the different books. And behind that grid, and you can go online and see the first 3 weeks of any instructor's guide that you want to. And so you could pull one of those up and you'll see all these things I'm talking about. Behind the grid that shows you what you're going to read for that week, every book has a little section with notes. It might be a note for the parent saying, hey, this topic is coming up in your science. You're going to be discussing, whatever this is in history, and it'll give you some notes for you to think about. It will also give you discussion questions. Of course, you can come up with your own, but it does give you some great ideas of discussion questions so that you can do them as you're reading or after the reading is completed so that you can assess your child's comprehension of what it is you've been talking about. And the other neat little thing that comes with the instructor's guide are some hands-on activities that are associated with the timeline book and the markable map. The timeline book and the markable map are 2 resources that you only have to purchase once, and then your child will add to it every single year, and you'll reuse the map every single year. So when you are learning about a certain historical figure in history, your instructor's guide will tell you there is a little cutout timeline figure. So you cut it out, peel the sticker off, and put that in your timeline book so that you can get an idea of where that person lived in history and when. And like I said before, you just add to it. So when you're studying level A and you put someone in there, and then you're in level F years later, and you put somebody else on that same part of the timeline, and you make this connection. Oh, wow, they were living at the same time, and this person, was doing this in history, and this person was doing this. So it's a really neat thing that just integrates throughout the years that you do Sonlight. So the instructor's guide tells you when to do the timeline figures. It tells you what to find on your map so that geography is incorporated too. And how much time does it take to get ready for a week? That's a good question too. Something I do like to bring up. What is a week in homeschool? Okay, your instructor's guide will either have 5 days worth of instruction planned out for you, or 4, because many levels of Sonlight give you that flexibility. So let's say you've got the 4-day schedule. Does that first column have to be a Monday? No, it does not. It might never be a Monday, and that does not matter. It's just that's the day that you happen to be on. It can be any day of the week. So that being said, no matter where we were in our guide, I would sit down, usually Sunday evening, and just look at the next week that I would be doing in the instructor's guide. Make sure I knew where those books were, that they hadn't wandered off the shelf or something. Kind of skim over the instructor guide pages to see what we'd be reading about. And so that just took a few minutes just to kind of, show me what it was that we'd be doing. When you do first start out with Sonlight, I do encourage you to take more time to read through the instructor's guide. Maybe not just at the very beginning of the week, but maybe just each night before you start the next school day, because it's all new to you. And when something is new to you, it can take a little more time to feel comfortable, with what you'll be doing each day and to be prepared. So it could be just a few minutes each night, the night before school, or once you kind of have the hang of it, just look over your week at a glance and you will be all set.
So it's laid out on a daily schedule, so you can see 1 week at a time across every subject. And so if you are a very structured person, you just open it on Monday and you go to the first day of the week, and it will tell you what pages to read in what book. It tells you what figures to put on the timeline. It tells you what maps to look at to refer to what you're reading. There are notes in every week of the instructor's guide to give you background, vocabulary, dates and important information, and also like heads up warnings about anything that might be sensitive material that might be in a certain book. How rigid do you have to be? Well, you don't have to be rigid at all, or you can check every box. And I find that it really is a guide. And so the way you use it has more to do with you as a person than the guide as a guide. So if you are a very type A box checker, you'll like date every reading that you did and make sure that every subject is on the same day, and that you're all caught up, and that, all the lines are beautiful, and you'll probably color code your markings. And if you're less rigid than that, then you can use it as a guide and, do a week's worth of poetry in one day, or a week worth of, science in one day. One of my kids liked to kind of what we call block schedule. So we would read, like 2 days of history today, but then no science, and 2 days of science tomorrow. And I know some type A people that would make them crazy, but it really worked for us. Also, by the end of the year, like as we're getting on to finishing some of those books, we would do like a big push and read poetry like twice a day, just to kind of finish the book and get it done. And again, that would drive a box checker nuts. I also let my kids skip an occasional book, or we would do one on audio instead of me reading it aloud. So it really is a guide. You can use it very rigidly, but you don't have to.
Well, it's just a guide. I always say it's right in the name, instructor's guide. It's not an instructor's boss. So it's a guide. It's just a kind of a roadmap. And when you go on a trip, you have a course, like your GPS has the little line. But if you see a Starbucks or a McDonald's, you are welcome to veer off. Your GPS might say, make a U-turn if possible, but you can mute that and go through Starbucks. And it's the same with Sonlight. You can decide that, oh, today we are just really into pyramids. And so we don't want to stop reading at the end of the day. We're just going to go ahead and read tomorrow's. That's okay. Or you might say, today is crazy and we don't have time to do pyramids. So you can skip that for today and just do it the next day. All of that is perfectly permissible. I just made a check mark when I did it and moved on. If you live in a state that you have to keep records, instead of a check mark, put a little date, 4/7, and move on. As far as 4-day versus 5-day, I always encourage you to think about your life. And if you are one of those people who's going to be hearing that instructor guide yelling at you because you did a 5-day, but you were out pretty much 1 day a week, then do a 4-day. Don't let that instructor guide cause you stress in your homeschool. You don't need that. You probably have lots of other ways to be stressed. Don't invite it by being over ambitious. It's really easy to make the curriculum fit you because it is laid out. It's not like you have to remember where you were or come up with a new way to do it. Just do the next right thing and make the curriculum fit into your lifestyle.
Yeah, so they're divided by week. So you have week 1, 2, 3, all the way through 36. So it's a very traditional 36-week curriculum. Every single week is divided into 4 days or 5 days. Sonlight has a 4-day schedule or a 5-day schedule. I used to do the 5-day schedule because I wanted to not miss anything. And then as I added children and activities and things, we quickly went to the 4-day schedule, which has been great for us. So Sonlight, based on what I'm doing like just this year, so I have, high school is 5 days, no matter what, because you're more serious in high school. You've got to do 5 full days to have that credit. But each week is divided into those days. So in the younger years, you can just do 4-day schedule. Every day is laid out. What do I cover in history? I read these pages. What reader am I reading? Is my child reading? Cover those pages. What read aloud is going along with history? That's covering those pages. What can I read in Bible? It's there. So you can follow your day straight down the page. Also, there are notes that come along with it. Heads up for parents. Hey, this book is going to talk about this. We want you to be aware of that. Gives you notes for maybe unfamiliar words, little mapping activities, timeline events. So it's really a wealth of material for you. Yeah, and then there are places to write in the date for you, so you really have it as kind of a journal for yourself too.
Okay. Again, so much information. Okay, there are a few things that I was going to highlight, and then Judy is going to answer one of the questions that came in. Someone asked about samples. Yes, we have 3-week samples for every instructor's guide: language arts, history, Bible, literature, and science, preschool through high school. So if there's a particular level that you are interested in, you can go to our website, go to the level that you want to see, and look under samples, and you'll see the 3-week sample. So you can definitely do that. I loved the tip to read through the instructor's guide. This is a new job for you. A lot of you, some of you are already homeschooling or already using Sonlight, but anyone who starts a new job, there is a steep learning curve. I had to learn this platform. That was a steep learning curve. And so it's going to take extra time. It's going to take reading and rereading, but eventually you will get comfortable with it and you'll be like, oh yeah, I don't need to look at the questions. I know what kind of questions to ask. You'll just go to the instructor's guide to get the schedule and see any notes that maybe you need to know, content that you might need to be aware of. You'll need to go there to get the timeline figure that kind of thing. So eventually you will be much more comfortable. But in your first year, yes, you will flip to it over and over again. Use a highlighter, use sticky notes, whatever tools you need to help you kind of speed things up. The 4-day and 5-day option was mentioned several times. I saw someone ask, are there more books? Yes, there are more books in the 5-day program than there are in the 4-day. That's how we lighten the load. So we don't just cram more books into four days. When I started homeschooling and when Judy started homeschooling, there were no 4-day options. So we just did that. We would cram, and that way we would have a day off. But we have lightened the load. And I know I saw some people were like, I don't want to miss the five books because they are so good. And Sonlight has created a 5-day book package that you can get just those books, and you can add those into your school year, or you can add them into your summer. If you have kids that are just voracious readers, you can get those books just for extra books. But you don't have to take that extra day to get it done. You can keep that day open. I loved it for enrichment type things. Also, it was a catch-up day. If I fell behind, I had a little bit of margin in my life, and I had some breathing room. So you definitely want to refer to your instructor's guide, even if you don't follow it day by day vertically, and you follow it more horizontally and you're a little bit more loosey-goosey. It is absolutely fine to do that. But there are those notes. I remember reading a high school book aloud to my child and reading about something really gross, and I was not expecting it because I had not read my note. It was in the instructor's guide, but I had neglected to read it. So you definitely want to read your instructor's guide for those kinds of things. Judy, can you talk a little bit about the digital instructor's guide? We had some questions about that.
Sure. I want to tack on to the end of your comments about the 4-day program. A couple of people asked, if you use the 4-day program and you have fewer books, are you going to miss content? And the answer to that is not really. Inherent in a literature-based program is overlap. So if you're studying American history and you're learning about George Washington, you'll probably read a biography about him. You'll also probably read a historical fiction piece that includes George Washington as a character. And so when we chose the books to leave out for the 4-day program, we were very intentional about making certain that you don't have these big George Washington shaped holes in your child's education. So you don't have to worry about that. Yes, digital instructor's guides. I've dropped a link into the chat where you can actually go on our website and learn about them in detail. I'm going to give you just a really quick couple of comments because we don't have a lot of time to cover them in depth, but it will be explained to you at that link that I shared. When you purchase a hard copy instructor's guide, you also have the option to purchase at a lower cost the digital guide that goes along with it. You cannot order the digital guide without the hard copy instructor's guide. And I know one question asked if the digital guide was printable. It's not, because you already have the hard copy guide. The digital online guide has the option for the student to log in and do their work online. And you as the parent/teacher has the option to log in from a different direction, so to speak, and see the work that they're doing and be able to keep track with what they're doing. So it's a really nice option if you need your children to be able to work independently for a stretch of time. I know I saw one question float by in an earlier session, can I work and do Sonlight at the same time? And we're going to talk about that later, but this is one of the ways you can do that, is to use a digital guide. Is it limited access, or do we get to keep it? I would have to go back and look, and that's why I shared that link, because there are fine details that, at least you said for 1 year. So that answers the question. Thank you, Lisa. I could not remember. But I dropped the link in there again. So lots of details at that link on our website.
Yes. One thing I wanted to say about the timeline book, we have a great video on our YouTube channel about using the timeline book if you're unsure as to what to do. So you can find that video on our Sonlight YouTube channel. But someone, I forget who it was, I didn't make a note, it may have been Kay, but they said that they bought sticker paper and created their own stickers to add to the timeline. And it's true that our history, the timeline book goes into the future, and we don't cover the most recent history. We don't cover last year or the year before or five years ago. What we did with the timeline book is we added ourselves to the timeline book. So my parents, so the grandparents, their birthdays and when they got married, and my parents, our birthdays, and when my husband and I got married, and our kids, because I want them to, it was UK. I wanted my kids to know that they are on the timeline. Like, we are living history right now. What happens today will be history tomorrow. And so that really kind of helps solidify the fact that these are just people's stories, just like we have stories, just like we have lives. These are other people's lives that we are reading about, learning about. And what I loved about the timeline book is that we would see year over year. So you just need to buy one book per family. Some people do like to get, each child has their own book. It's up to you. I have boy, girl. My boys do not care about stickers and things like that. So we just had a family timeline book. But then every year, when you get a new level, when you finish level K and then you move on to level A, you will get a new set of stickers that will go in your book. And over the years, you will start to see juxtaposed, like, things that you learned about in American history and things you learned about in world history. And they occurred at the same time. Like, so many times we learn about things in a silo and we don't realize how things interact. So that timeline book is great for that kind of thing. We have talked about scheduling an education consultation this morning, and you might not know what that is exactly. So these two ladies are here. They've joined me to explain exactly what that is. What is it, and who can benefit from one?
Well, an education consultation is a fancy name for a phone call with me or Ann. We will take the time to get to know a little bit about your family and answer some questions. And it is beneficial for anyone who is starting to think about homeschooling, who is already homeschooling but thinking about switching curriculum, or even if you are a current Sonlight user, but your circumstances are going to change for the upcoming school year. Like, maybe you're adding in another learner, or you're starting high school, or any myriad of things that could have come up in your homeschool that caused you to say, I'm not sure what I should be doing next. You could schedule a consultation with one of us and we can help you with those things.
So you girls are bringing the big sister energy and helping people with all of their homeschooling needs. I think that's great. So how long does a consultation last? Like, how much time should a person expect? And is there a cost to it?
Well, first, there is no cost at all, and there are two options for the length of consultation. If you only have a few questions, you can book a 15-minute consultation. If you think that you have more to discuss, then 30 minutes is an option also.
And if you are watching this from outside of the United States, we even have an option for you. You would want to look for the international consultation that will generate a Teams meeting link in Microsoft Teams, which is free to use, and we will contact you that way. Do not worry, you do not have to turn on your camera, because chances are we won't be looking camera ready either.
That is so great. It's just really just a phone call over the computer. So so no one incurs any kind of long distance charges. So Lisa, will you help people in choosing an appropriate level for them, for their family, and all of the different subjects?
So yeah, that is one of the things that we frequently do on a consultation call, is help you find the right entry point to Sonlight or what your next steps might be. And that would include helping you find the placement tools for reading, language arts, all of our math programs. That's really just what we're going to help you do, is get exactly what you need.
And Anne, what about if you have more than one child? Do you have to buy two completely separate programs? Is there a way to combine or customize one package that you can use with multiple children?
There are so many options with Sonlight. It is completely customizable based on your situation. And so when Lisa or I talk with you, we can see what ages your children are, where you could possibly combine them in subjects that are not skill-based, and help you come up with a plan that meets your needs and your schedule.
Okay. And what about, can you talk about what a typical Sonlight day looks like? Because it's really a little different than regular school. It's not school at home. It's going to be different. So will you explain that to people, and will you help people adapt Sonlight to their own situation? Because people have different issues going on, and it is very adaptable. Will you help with that?
Yes, so that is a frequent question I get on a consultation. Well, how did your school day go? And so I will share what my routine was. I do not like the word schedule, so it was a routine, and I will share what worked for my family, but that doesn't mean it will work for your family. We have some great members here in the app or in our Sonlight Connections app, and they are also willing to share theirs. So yes, that is definitely something we can talk about. And then talking about adaptations, absolutely. Anne already mentioned that Sonlight was really customizable, but what if you customize it but find it's still, your child doesn't like to do the physical act of writing for creative expression, or can't sit still during math? We can talk about all of those things and ways to adapt Sonlight to your unique family. This is not, as Sheila mentioned, just recreating a classroom at home where everyone has to sit at your desk and do the work right in the same way. We can talk through lots of different options, not only what we did in our homeschools, but Anne and I have also talked to thousands, literally, of homeschool moms and heard their experience and tucked those good nuggets away when we're like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. And so we can share all of those things with you.
Yeah, deciding to homeschool and deciding which homeschool curriculum to go with, it can be really overwhelming. There are so many options out there, and you feel like there's so much to learn. So homeschooling at this stage can be very overwhelming. And what do you guys do to help calm that overwhelm down?
Yes, there are so many curriculum choices, and that is overwhelming. And once you are in the thick of homeschooling, so many things happen to feel overwhelming. Thoughts that have crossed my mind. I am my child's teacher. Am I going to be able to do this? Are they going to turn out okay? All those things. And between Lisa and me, we have about 40 years of homeschool experience, and so it's quite likely that if you were feeling it, we have felt it too, and we have been there. So we can share our experiences, and that's just one of the great ways that homeschoolers can learn from each other. Sharing the good and the bad, and what worked, for me, and just based on your situation and your schedule, what may work for you. Lisa mentioned the Sonlight app is a great place. There are many members in the app, and they also have experiences and have been through things, and that is a great place to go. To help with any of the emotions and things that you are experiencing. So basically, to sum it up, we've all been there, and we are here to support each other. And so, yes, we would love to talk with you about what you are feeling overwhelmed with, so that we can help.
Yes, that Sonlight Connections app is just a great online community for you to connect with other people who are using your same curriculum, your same levels, and that can rejoice with you when you have something to rejoice over, that can pray for you when you are having, an area where you may be struggling, or make suggestions for solutions, that kind of thing. So I do hope that you join us on the Sonlight Connections app. Check it out in your app store. But what about for those people who are really just starting out to homeschool and they don't even know what the legalities are for their state? Every state is different. How do they find out what the law is in their state? Can you help with any of those kinds of questions?
Absolutely. While I'm not an attorney and I'm not a legal expert on homeschooling, I do have lots of resources that I can share with people when we chat. Not just legality, but maybe some suggestions on how to plug into a local in-person community, or other resources like educational savings accounts that may be available in their state. So lots of information that I think is a lot of what Anne and I do is just tell you the things that you didn't even know. Like, you didn't ask the question because you didn't know to ask the question. You don't know what you don't know, but we know a lot of those kinds of things. So absolutely, we can share lots of resources with you as you're getting started. And, you know, even if we don't have the answer, we know where you can find the answer.
You guys really are just a wealth of information and a great resource for people to be able to pick your brains for all kinds of things. So if someone decides that they want to purchase after having talked to you, what are those next steps? Do they have to purchase with you on the phone? What comes next?
Oh, yeah, there are lots of options if you do decide to purchase. Lisa and I can help build your cart for you. If you are building your cart yourself, then we can check it over before you order just to make sure everything is looking really good and that as a brand new customer, you're not forgetting anything. But it is a no pressure thing. We are here to answer your questions about homeschooling, and yes, about Sonlight curriculum as you're considering it. But there is no obligation at all to purchase by having a consultation with us.
That is such a relief. So if you do decide to schedule an appointment, you can follow the link and pick one of the two ladies on a day that works for you, find a time that works for you, and then they will take it from there. Thank you so much for joining me.